The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet.
Earth.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
Is the planet stupid?
No. It's the planet, stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid, Belinda Waymouth, eco-journalist, often with good news about the planet, so it's not always bad. And sometimes it's just news about the planet and stuff going on. It's funny, Belinda, when I saw the cicada story, and there's so much talk about cicadas, we've had them in the news every day, I thought of you, and, there's so many different facets to it. I wonder if you could speak to it a bit for us. Welcome.
Thank you. So good to be back. I missed you guys. The cicadas, it's really wild, because what's about to happen is we're about to have two lots. They're called periodical cicadas, because normally they just pop up every summer. But there are these two different cohorts, and what happens is they hatch, but then they stay underground. So there's one lot that stays underground for 13 years, and they call them nymphs. So they're these nymph cicadas. They're underground. They're proboscises or whatever, are sucking the juice out of tree roots. And they spend 13 years like that. And then they decide, okay, that's the 13 years, we're out. And there's another group that of periodicals that do the same thing, but they stay underground for 17 years. And we haven't had a double entrance of this all-you-could-eat buffet of cicadas and the noise that they'll make. We haven't had a double entrance since 1803. So, it has to be, the math has to line up, for these two groups to pop out at once.
Sure.
And the ones that have been underground for 17 years, they're coming up in northern Illinois. And the other ones are coming up in the, east of the U.S. And
this is important, though, because we have a map up so you can see where they are, because there are parts of the U.S. that are going, what are you talking about? I don't hear anything. It doesn't seem like it. It's geographically, I should say, concentrated.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because, geography, part of my degree when I was doing environmental science was geography. And they always say geography is spatial and temporal. And this is really that, it's where are they coming up geographically? Where's the space? And it's the time factor. Yeah, this shows it really kind of very beautifully. These cicadas can cover 190,000 square miles, and the noise they make is so intense. It's really hard. Human beings are calling the police. I mean, people go, "Oh my, it's so noisy. I can't sleep. I can't think." I
grew up with in Washington D.C. with the cicadas hitting. I thought they were 7-year cycles. I don't remember what the cycles were, but I just remember thinking, "Oh my God!" And you're right. I mean, it's really loud, and you when you walk outside, it's like, "Oh my God!" It's like almost like an alarm. You know what I mean? It's like listening to an alarm going off.
Yeah. No, it's very intense. And then if you think about what it's like for us, what about the species who eat cicadas? I mean, they go bonkers. I mean, the wild turkey population is going to have this big, sort of surge, because there's going to be so much to eat. So there'll be happy turkeys, they'll be busy mating, and, we'll get a lot more wild turkeys. And this is going to happen for other bird species as well, which is kind of good, because birds are really, beleaguered in the, North America. And, we've lost 30 billion birds. And so the fact that, birds will get this, big surge in food. The only problem is that if you're a species that gorges on all these cicadas, these trillions of cicadas that will come, and you have all these babies, but next year there won't be this resource pulse, all this food about. So that's troubling. And then the other thing that happens, which isn't good, is the other insects that the birds and bats and moles and other animals would eat, like the caterpillars, they go unchecked. Their populations go unchecked, and so they can really damage trees because there are too many caterpillars. They're not being predated by the birds, and so they're chomping on the leaves.
I see. Wow, it's an ecologically destabilizing thing.
Yeah. It really is. It's really, and they say that it could sort of rewire, it rewires the food web, and it really is upsetting, for the sort of ecology of these areas. Of course, scientists are super excited because it gives them this incredible opportunity to study not only what happens when all the cicadas are here, but what happens afterwards. And then with climate change and the heating up of the planet, are these massive events going to happen earlier in the year? They're going to come earlier and earlier. I mean, this one was supposed to be end of April. I don't think they've really started coming yet. Yeah, there's one of our fabulous cicadas.
And the other thing is that when they die off, it's like a mass die-off. Like when they're done, and then those carcasses are everywhere. I remember that as a kid. It's like, holy, I mean, it's like a rainstorm, but imagine raindrops that big,
Yeah, it's sort of biblical, or it's like, I mean, it really is. It's sort of like this huge infestation. It's like, what are we, am I Job, that I'm getting this, all these cicadas are coming. It only lasts for 5 to 7 weeks. And they say it's actually really good for the soil, because when the cicadas die and they're all, lying on the soil, that's all these resources that will then go back into the soil. But also these trillions of little nymphs, when they come out of the soil, they're creating little air pockets, little holes. And so precipitation, moisture can get in. And so, they're actually, yeah.
But this is why I love talking to you, because there's so many different aspects to this. It's more than just the noise or that they're everywhere. The ecological imbalance, but also the ecological benefits. It's fascinating, really fascinating.
Yeah. And there are so many different things that get affected by it. No, it's I mean, Mother Nature is really, this incredible, thing, how it all, fits together and works. And the other thing they say about cicadas, and this is true for lots of insects, they're sort of adapting, they could adapt faster than us because they have such a short life cycle. So they're adapting faster to climate change, obviously, than human beings and other species are.
Has their cycle been affected by climate change? In other words, no, it's still on the same calendar it used to be on.
Yeah, it's still on the same calendar. It's just that, with the heating up of the planet, they'll emerge earlier and earlier probably from the soil. And what will that do? So there are all these, as with lots of things with climate change, lots of unknowns, you know. So that happened. So that's happening.
On that climate change stuff, can you speak to what's happening in Asia with the climate?
Yeah. Well, I do want to touch on a positive story, which is sort of isn't happening a moment too soon as far as Asia is concerned. Or should we save the positive to the end? We'll save the positive to the end. So what's happening in Asia? It's terrible. So they are getting heat waves in Southeast and Eastern Asia. So you've got India, you've got Myanmar, the Philippines, Thailand, Cambodia. They are hot. I mean, the other day in what city was it? In Bangkok, it was 125 degrees. So Thailand has already had, by the end of April, they'd already had 30 related, heat stress related deaths in the human population. Normally in a whole year, Thailand would get 37 deaths. So to already have 30 is really huge. And schools are closing early. It's not even summer. They're telling workers, stay home. India is, really suffering, and it's their election right now. And so there are, get this, there are 1 billion Indians who are eligible to vote, but the campaigning and voting process, it's too hot to go outside. And the awful thing is that, if you work outside, you obviously can't work if it's this hot, but you then go to sleep hungry. And UNICEF is, and the other thing is a lot of these countries are experiencing drought right now. So they're in a drought, their crops are withering, and then with this excess heat. UNICEF, I mean, this was horrifying when I read this. UNICEF says that in Asia and the Pacific, there are 243 million children who are at risk from heat-related illness and death. And, that just makes you want to cry. I mean, it's so catastrophic what's happening. And these are countries, without air conditioning, without our resources. I sent through to Albert and to Tony also a map of where it's going to be hot in the US this summer, because we're not immune. It's going to be hot here as well.
Before you get to the US, and maybe Albert, you can scare that up, but I saw that incident involving that munitions factory or an ammunition depot. It was so hot that the ammunition just started exploding.
Yeah.
It killed soldiers who were there, guarding the ammunition depot.
Yeah. Well, when I was, sort of thinking about the show today and the good thing that's happening with renewable energy when it comes to electricity generation, this isn't coming a moment too soon for these Asian countries. So yeah, this was in Cambodia. It was old, faulty munitions, but it was also extremely hot. It was 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And just to, I say this often, but guys, we, us human beings, we start it's a stress for our bodies as soon as it gets to 85 degrees. As soon as it's 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that is hard on the human system. And then as the temperature goes up, it just gets harder and harder. And it's very hard on it.
Forget about the map for a second. You can find the picture of what I'm talking about and what Belinda is talking about.
Yeah, because first of all, they tried
it's
to
right
make
there
out
in the
soldiers...
It's right there in the article that you can, that's in the rundown. Anyway, point being, you see this munitions depot that blows up, and 20 soldiers were killed.
Yeah. So 20 soldiers get killed. The barracks get demolished. There are neighboring buildings that get damaged. And first of all, they sort of tried to blame it on the behavior of the soldiers, that they must have been doing something like naughty soldiers, but they weren't. This was old, faulty munitions, and just the temperatures were too hot. So, this...
Well, the reason the government was trying to blame it on the soldiers is because the government has to pay compensation to the families, and they're always trying to get out of that. But it really does sort of give you such a stark reminder, as you suggested, of what happens. And you've talked about all the people who are exposed to these completely unhealthy levels of heat and how it affects their ability to function and their lives. So,
it's and we have to remember that, the developing world, we in the West, we are the ones who have put most of the emissions, into the atmosphere. We've caused this catastrophic heating, but, yes, we're feeling it. We're getting floods, we're getting fires, obviously, but we're talking about millions of people who are being so adversely affected, who don't have a carbon footprint like, you and I do, Mark, and also don't have air conditioning to escape to. And so the sort of the social injustice of it is very intense. And I say this all the time, the biggest thing that our listeners can do if they're concerned about this is, you have to vote for the right candidate. You have to vote for candidates who are, know that climate change is an issue and are doing the right thing, now more than ever. We've got Ron DeSantis down in Florida. He's about to completely get climate change excised from state laws. Now, 16 years ago, they had a Republican governor, Christ, and he was a Republican, but he absolutely knew that climate change was real and that renewable energies were very important. Renewable energy as opposed to fossil fuel use was very important, and he put that into state laws. Ron DeSantis is about to get that, nullified, and here he is, the governor of the state in the U.S. that is most affected by sea level rise, that is absolutely on the front lines of climate change, that's got coral bleaching happening, or Florida's just sitting in a bathtub of hot water, and you've got this ridiculous governor. Sorry, I'm going to call him ridiculous because it's ridiculous at this point with climate change to be trying to pretend that it's not happening and that, using fossil fuels is still okay. He's saying it's got to be about the economy and what makes sense. And, that's just ludicrous. Because,
we have an
because this
economy
is going to cost us so much money, and it's going to cost Florida so much money.
That's the great truth, that Florida just keeps rebuilding. They build bigger seawalls. San Francisco has to build a bigger seawall. I mean, there's no part of the U.S. that's in any way inoculated from the effects of climate change. And what I'm seeing in the chat is everything from, some of our regular trolls are not only climate deniers, but I'm not even going to justify or what is it? Dignify is the word I really want. I'm not going to dignify it with a response. I mean, some of them are just flamethrowers. So, I mean, when you can talk about, if you really consider this some kind of sort of liberal talking point, then you're just out of touch, man. I mean, this is not, we've just given you the evidence. So what I think is a greater challenge is for the developed world, because the developed world has the ability to pivot. We have the ability to pivot toward alternative energies. We have the ability to cut back on our emissions and fossil fuel emissions. The question is, do we have the will to do it? As you said, one party certainly doesn't have the will to do it, it would seem, in the main, and the other party may not be doing it aggressively enough. So I hope that that this clarion call, which is everywhere, I mean, it's nature's clarion call, will be respected on some level. And I'm talking about politically in terms of policy.
Yeah. Well, governments have, at COP28 did make this pledge that they were going to double the amount of, renewable electricity generation. And the really exciting story that just came out, and I also, I don't know if it has any great visuals to put up. I don't know if it does, but okay, there's this think tank called Ember, and they were assessing where we're at with electricity generation last year. Which, yes, Sandy, last year was the hottest year on record. You're saying how every year they're saying it's the hottest, and 2023 was the hottest, and 2024 will be the hottest again, because we keep on heating up, because there's too much carbon and there's too much methane in the atmosphere. So any naysayers in the chat, it's science, it's just science, guys. But last year, global electricity production from renewable energy surpassed the 30% mark, which is really huge, because in 2000, it was 19% of electricity the world over came from renewables. And in the last couple of decades, that has increased, that's gone up by 50%. And it went from 20% to 30% of the electricity generated. And for years and years I've been bleating on the show, it's all wind, it's so important. Well, solar is the one that's really going nuts. And the thing that's great about solar, wind turbine is big, but I don't have it now, but I'll have it for next week. But in Africa, you can put up a solar panel on your thatched hut that you live in. You don't have to have those great have a great big wind turbine put in. You can power your your phone and the other electricity that you get to have where you live right from a solar panel on the side of your your thatched hut. So it's very democratic solar. And it's much more readily available, and it's become so cheap. So its implementation has really, really grown. And what Ember has found, this think tank, is that it's also really curtailing fossil fuels, because solar is the cheapest, electricity that you can generate now of all the new electricity that's coming online. And, talking about these, overheating Asian countries, they could also, I don't know, I don't have the, the stats right now for solar deployment in those countries, but, China is going great guns. They are a huge producer of solar panels, and, get them to your neighbors so that, we can, get off fossil fuels faster. I mean, the one, thing is that, and the other thing that's interesting is that, our electrical use and needs are increasing. And even though, they are, increasing, it's still solar that's able to meet it faster and is, outcompeting fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, of course, as far as industry, heating and transport, they are still, the big bosses when it comes to energy production there. But what is happening, the revolution that's happening in electricity production, 2023 could turn out to be peak emissions from fossil fuels in electricity generation. And if that tipping point has happened, then, look out other sectors, because, as I also say this like a broken record, but, it's happening in spite of leaders like Ron DeSantis, and in spite of the Republican Party, trying to make out that, renewable energy or talking about climate change is, being woke. It's not being woke, it's being informed.
The challenge is really from a policy standpoint, and you had some of it in the Paris Climate Accord, and you have some of it in the international agreements that have informed the last decade, let's say. The question is aggressive policy and real pivot toward that aggressive policy. And sadly, you see the meetings, you see the various pronouncements, but I think the policy, for me anyway, doesn't come far enough. And those who say, well, Mark, are you willing to give up your car and give up your stove and first of all, you don't have to give those things up. But if you're asking me if I would to save the planet, hell yeah, I would. I mean, I have no problem. Oh, Mark, you're going to tell me you're going to take a bus for the rest? Yeah, I've got no problem with it. I mean, if it's the literal end of the world that's at the end of it, well, you wouldn't. It's like when a doctor comes to you and says, hey, you've got to give up meat, otherwise you're going to have a heart attack. You go, well, you know what, I really like meat. Yeah, no kidding, man. But you're going to die if you keep eating it in the quantities you're eating. I could eat cardboard if the doctor said that's the only way you're going to survive. And similarly, if the science informs us of certain realities, I think they're stark enough that we have to begin that real aggressive pivot. Anyway, that's my little speech on it. But I love that you come with us on these little journeys through good news and bad. And I feel as though the cicada thing was neither good nor bad. I mean, you gave us this the way nature shakes out on this planet, and the other stuff is sadly just kind of the reality that we are facing. So
well, the thing is, the cicadas are doing their job, and we're doing our job. We're just not doing our job very well, vis-a-vis the planet and our own survival. And this is the thing, this is what we're doing by, refusing to, really, I mean, fossil fuels we should just stop subsidizing the trillions of dollars that fossil fuel companies get. That just needs, you cut that right off and, give that to renewables. But this is us as a species. And we really, our survival is in our own hands right now. The cicadas are busy doing their thing, and, they're going to survive whatever we do. But we need to get right-sized for the planet, and the sort of hubris that we have, like, oh, I don't want to give this up, or I don't want to, I mean, it's really, we're, as a species, we don't like change. It's very uncomfortable for human beings. It always has been. I get that, but there's too much at stake right now.
Well, there are also great economic opportunities in the kind of change we're talking about. We're out of time. You can find Belinda Waymouth across social media. Belinda Waymouth, you see it there. Waymouth. Love seeing you and looking forward to next week. It's the Planet Stupid for today. See you, Belinda.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
More
It's the Planet Stupid. No, it's the Planet Stupid.
next time, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.